Hello, I'm at DTW in Copenhagen at the Bella Centre, this massive sort of greenhouse they put together for conferences. I'm here with Scott Bucciano from telecoms.com, Ruth Brown from Heavy Reading Omdia, kind of both. Just getting off perspectives. Day one of the show, so I think not really a surprise that a lot of the conversation has been based around artificial intelligence.
It comes up.
And I know Scott and I, we sort of sat in the keynote presentations. You were in some of those, Ruth. I mean, my own takeaway on it really is I still feel we kind of go over some of the same messages again and again at this show. The themes change a bit. I mean, artificial intelligence just seems to be everywhere now whenever you come to a telco trade show. But I kind of wonder whether it's sorting out some of the kind of fundamental problems that the telco industry has. And I know that there was a kind of optimistic note struck by Nick Willits of the TM Forum. I think he came out with this sort of code red message a couple of years ago. It's time for the industry to act and do something. And I sort of thought he might get up and say, well, we're still in a situation where things aren't really working. And he didn't. He kind of sort of lauded some of these achievements of the TM Forum. And I don't want to knock that, because I think the plumbing and the stuff that they do is important, but I just don't see it being enough to really kind of get the industry out of the crisis that it's in. But Ruth, I don't know if you have a upbeat take. Yeah.
I guess what you said, is it a lot of the similar messages? So, there was a big push on data. We've heard that for a number of years, but it's almost like they're amplifying it more now because of the agentic messages, and the fact that if your data is wrong, you're just going to amplify what happens with the AI, how it, behaves in your network. So that, I think, is probably why we've heard that again coming up. To your point about should we be optimistic, there's a lot of activity. I checked out the Catalyst zone earlier just to see some of these projects. Most of them have got some sort of element of agentic. It's interesting to see, so they're all multi-vendors working together, which is quite interesting and significant in itself, probably more so, I think, than I've seen a few years back. Some are working where they would span the whole space potentially and could do the full solution. They're actually working with multiple partners to deliver something, so that was good. The other, I don't know if it's a surprise, but was kind of nice to hear, was in the keynotes, they actually brought up 6G, which was a bit of a hidden or elephant in the room, especially at Mobile World Congress. No one wanted to mention it. But obviously that is stating from the outset, we've had some of the workshops, but that's stating that AI is going to be one of the fundamental layers, because it's going to be, native AI.
And I mean, you mentioned agentic AI there, because that's a sort of slightly newer thing, isn't it? I think last year we weren't sort of bandying that term around as much. But do you see that doing much for the telco sector specific? It's obviously not telco specific, is it? You have an agentic AI that can be applied to other industries, but do you see that having a kind of big impact on what the telcos are doing? So,
like you say, certainly it's been going in the enterprise space for some considerable, time. They're, starting to use it more in vigor and more in actual useful applications and bringing it in. Over here in the Catalyst domain, they're showing it. Are we there? That it's in kind of processes. It's good to see the technology is kind of evolving. I was talking to one guy and he was saying 2 years ago they wouldn't have had the technology to do this, and it's at the stage where it can sort of perceive the network. It's getting this data. If it can get the data quality, it's able to sort of make sense of it a bit. But there's almost an air gap now between the action part, because that's probably they could do it, and make it in smaller applications. At the moment, that's what they're testing here, rather than the full, level 5 fully autonomous level. But there's almost this air gap where they've got this button like push to check, for an operator, or push to apply to the network. So they're testing it into like digital twins or other applications, rather than like fully launch into it. So
Scott, what do you reckon? Because you're in a lot of the same stuff that I was in.
Yeah, well, the three of us all sat together, little team that we are. I wrote it up, as is my way. I like to turn these things around nice and quickly.
I liked your headline.
So thank you. I did a headline where I sort of said it's deja vu all over again. I had a little pun in the Deja, I replaced the E with an AI, capitalized AI.
See what you did there.
But I was, I was aware when I was writing it that it could probably seem, you don't want to be that journalist that's just always sort of dumping on the messaging and just, being too negative. And as I hope I made clear in the piece, I have some sympathy for Nick Willits and TM Forum and anyone else who's up on the stage, because they don't really have much choice but to repeat the same message, because the same problems are still there. And just one thought within AI and what it's doing, I think from conversations I had subsequently, there's like two distinct subcomponents. There's some of the stuff that we've alluded to do with efficiency and automation. And one person I was just chatting to reckons it could like double the percentage return on investment through efficiency. Yeah. So it could really be quite significant in terms of telco's profitability. It's just that that's not very exciting. Efficiency and automation is not a very exciting thing to talk about. And then the other one, which they dwelt on a lot in the keynotes, and which was the thing I was making my deja vu comment about, was like, is it going to enable, are things like agentic AI going to enable more innovation and more agility, and for them to come out with these amazing new products that we're all going to want to spend more money on? And that's the one I'm still really struggling with.
I mean, I don't get that really, because I don't see how an AI-enabled network or a network that supports new AI services will do necessarily anything for connectivity revenues in the same way that 5G, by allowing mobile video to work, didn't
Indeed.
For the connectivity.
So you get efficiency,
that's
but
the gap for me. Is like the companies that probably make money out of this are the ones that are building the applications themselves. Telcos don't design GPUs, they don't build large language models, they don't sell AI inferencing. I know there's talk of that happening. They don't do any of the things that you might make money from in AI, really. They're still connectivity companies, and I agree on the efficiency side. I mean, that's the thing where you can see what you were saying, level 5 autonomous network, which is basically there's not really anybody involved in it. But the implication then is you don't have, I mean, that throws up other concerns because you don't really have a workforce then. So it's what are people doing at that stage? It's yes, it's going to boost profits, but there's a kind of negative story to it as well, isn't there? So
yeah, I guess you've got that skills. Are you letting AI do everything? So you've still got to retain that balance. And I feel, when you go and speak to these technical experts, they are fully into the detail. They're giving it to you straight. But I think we will see the optimization, the efficiency coming way ahead of the monetization. Because I sat there and I thought I'm still not fully understanding. There are routes for it, and we hear about the use cases and an ultra personalized experience, but I think we're also at the point where consumers, enterprises, people kind of expect that level straight away, don't they? Personalized, and it will just evolve for them. They'll think it's perhaps part of their regular service
I guess
plan.
If all the telcos are doing it, it's like you don't really get a competitive advantage from it, do you? It's this old problem of there's too many operators. They're not platform companies like a Google that spans the world. So if everybody's using AI to improve service quality, then they're all kind of in the same position. Ultimately, prices will adjust so there's not really a kind of, it's great for consumers, but I don't see it being great for telco revenues necessarily. But I mean, I don't want to sound like I was being negative about Nick, by the way, because I think the TM Forum probably does a good job. And I think a few years ago, people were saying, is it still relevant? Is it... I think when it was the last days in Nice, we used to go to that show. I think the numbers have dwindled quite a lot.
They definitely spruced it up moving here. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I think a lot more smaller players as well. So you're going around, and I know catalysts are typical activities where you would get smaller companies in, but you've got all these AI companies coming in. It's not the big cloud providers everywhere, although, they're part of these solutions along with the network software vendors and stuff. But it does feel like there's more innovation coming into the industry. Certainly.
What do you think about because I think you might have been there you might have left by then. There's a guy from New Day, which is a Danish telco, talking about the sovereign cloud, and there's been a bit more conversation about that in Europe recently, where for geopolitical reasons, they might not want to be leaning on US providers quite as much. Does that create an opening for people like New Day or BT in the UK or Orange in France to kind of step in and do some of the things that the hyperscalers might do?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it does, because there's always going to be that concern about not just the sovereignty, but keeping things local, which is they're almost, especially if you get into Europe, you've got to, there's so many borders, aren't they, that you want to keep within your country, and you're either going to end up the big cloud providers have to put loads and loads of data centers everywhere, additional ones,
Yeah.
or perhaps like you say, it offers new opportunities to these people to, step in and say, I've got a solution in this space.
Yeah.
And those opportunities, the thing is, a lot of them are going to be, a lot of the new revenue streams are going to be B2B, and they're going to be fixed line operators. So where it's hardest of all to see where AI or any of the technologies or initiatives that we talk about at shows like this is going to move things along is consumer and mobile. So you can see, we just had it. It wasn't announced at this event, but coinciding with this event, we just had the announcement that the new head of fixed line at Nokia is the guy that came over from Infinera, which is all about data center interconnect and all that sort of thing. So that's where a lot of AI opportunities are, but not necessarily in enabling AI in this.
No, although you get things like AI RAN, don't you? Where they talk about, hosting GPUs in your edge network, and you can sort of.
But I
use it
still
to-
think that's mainly an efficiency play, at least now.
Yeah.
It might be more juicy, but right now it's just about efficiency and automation. So.
Yeah, I think that's also because we're still kind of early in the kind of cycle of it, aren't we? I think because I'm a technologist at heart, I'm quite optimistic about, things that will come along, and I think we will get services come along to bridge that gap that will actually use the capabilities of the network. But at the moment, none of us truly know what those are, and I suppose we've got to get the networks ready. There was several conversations that I've had as well about, we've got into the whole cloud and we've embraced cloud, but some of the cloud implementations are still fairly static. So I guess until you fix that and become, fully elastic, you're not going to be able to even envisage these new, really sophisticated services, because you need that, at the base layer. So I guess we've got to build up from the bottom, but then we've also got to rethink the way we kind of interact with the network. So there's a lot more about driving, these use cases from the sort of top down. So, coming in from the enterprise, this is the intent I want, this is the way I want to interact with my service, etc.
Yeah, and I think we all probably want to see applications come along that kind of rejuvenate sales growth if possible, because that's sort of what the whole industry depends on. But I'm sure there'll be more chatter about it tomorrow, and we can reconvene at some point and share our thoughts about that. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us.